It's the Terry Sullivan Show. Today's guest, pastor of Northview Baptist Church, Pastor Ken Wells. And now, the man who pays me weekly, very weekly, it's Terry Sullivan.
What do you say? He pays me well. Well, he pays me.
Well, he pays me.
He pays me weekly and very weekly.
Hey, you're talking to a man that'll use that one.
That's right. I'll be Sunday morning right there. Yeah.
You know, I think maybe another few days or so, you'll get that thing over there.
Yeah.
You're pretty good on that thing.
I'm trying.
You're talking to a man that plays guitar too.
Not like that. No, sir. No, I'm just rhythms. All I do, chords and rhythm.
As I've learned years ago, often wrong, but never in doubt.
You have to have a rhythm player to be in the band. So you got to have somebody take the lead, somebody do the rhythm. That's me.
Pastor, it's good to have you.
Yes, sir.
I've got Ken Wells with me today. Pastor Wells has been pastor of Northview Baptist Church going on 42 years.
42 years this coming Sunday. Yes, sir.
What a journey.
Yes, sir, it has been.
And we're going to talk, I've got my mind's going in so many different directions of what I want to talk to you about, because if there's ever been one thing that has changed so dramatically through the decades, it's church work.
Yes, sir.
It's ministry. But you've been there 42 years. You told me just a while ago that you and Teresa she got married just a few months before you took that church.
Yes, sir.
Does she know what she was getting into?
Well, I think so. Because she knew I was going to be a pastor one day, that kind of thing. But we didn't really expect it to happen that quick. But it did. So, and we just went in. We were kids, basically freshly married. Yeah. She was still in college, and I'd finished Bible college and just preaching wherever somebody would let me.
Yeah.
And then the Lord opened the door for me to go to Northview Baptist Church. And it had been through a pretty difficult time before I got there. We only had 20 people my first Sunday.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So, could there be any more perfect of a wife for a pastor than Teresa?
No, she can do it all.
Yeah.
She loves the Lord. She loves her family. She actually grew up in Northview as a small girl. Her family was charter members there.
No kidding.
She had left during her high school years playing a piano at First Baptist Church. She was the pianist even as a teenager for the First Baptist Church in town. And God brought us together and then brought us basically back home to her home church. And I lived close by that. I didn't go to that church by any means, but I was close by there, and God allowed us to go there. And so she's done great. She plays the piano. She's been on that piano since she was a little girl, actually.
Well, she's an accomplished pianist.
She's very good. She can play by ear, play by music, whatever you want her to do. And then she's taking care of our family. She's been a professional. Has a master's degree. She's been assistant principal for the Lewisville High School till retirement. She's continued with more education. She's done a lot of things. She's a speaker for various women's groups and things like that as well.
You may want to hold on to her.
Yeah, I try to. Yes, sir.
It's too late to change anyway, but you better just keep riding that one.
Well, I married way above my head, put it that way.
Pastor, you're also a chaplain of the Lewisville Police Department and chaplain of the Lewisville Fire Department.
Yes, sir.
And through the years, you've seen some pretty difficult times. For example, just recently, the assistant police chief passed away.
Yes, sir.
And how do you deal with that?
Those are difficult times, and that's one of the reasons of being a chaplain for them. In a way, you become a pastor.
Yeah.
You know, we're here for the community, but we're also here for our own guys and the ladies who work in our departments to stand alongside them when tragedy strikes, such as what we've just had, Chief Tittle that passed away some years ago, be with their family, be there to do the funerals and things, just to stand by them. But then just things in life, when most of the time a chaplain gets called out on the bad stuff that happens in town.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are pretty tough calls, you know, but we in our departments, police and fire departments for Lewisville, we got some of the best people. I'm talking about top shelf people who just do a phenomenal job.
Well, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
They serve our community very well.
And it's my privilege to work alongside them and kind of behind the scenes, you know, to encourage, support them when I can. So I love doing that. And I've been doing that for almost 42 years now.
My goodness. They serve us well.
Yes, sir.
They serve us well.
Yes, sir.
So you have a new grandbaby?
Brand new. It was born on Friday. She's Sadie K. Wells. My son is Heath, and his wife is Whitney. And everything's just great. She's a little redhead, so we're excited. It's my third grandchild.
So is Heath just kind of hard to deal with right now? He's just a proud papa?
Oh, he's on cloud nine, but he's doing such a great job being a dad, being a husband, really. He's just, I mean, I've watched him in action, and you always want your kids to grow up and do right.
Yeah.
But he is just excelling. He's doing a great job. I've watched him in action, and he's just madly in love with his wife and just over the moon about that baby, obviously, as you can imagine.
Well, I think you might be too.
Well, I am. So it was very exciting. In that hospital room, when everything was finished, I got to have all three of my grandbabies in that same room.
My goodness.
One is 8, one's a little over a year old, the little boy is, and then the brand new, and that was just born Friday. So.
Well, Heath is he's just kind of a chip off the old block. He's just a good man.
Thank you, sir.
Man of character, man of principle. He's just a good man.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about church work.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can reduce this down into a short conversation or not, but from where you started 42 years ago, how has church work changed through the decades?
Well, first of all, the message has never changed. And as far as I'm concerned, the message will never change. It's still the gospel. Jesus still saves. He forgives sinners. Now, how we present that is in different ways.
Yeah.
You're doing a podcast. You're using film. We're now doing that as well at our church.
Right.
We've taken the message through Facebook and YouTube around the world. We actually have members who don't even live nearby, who live in other states, that are part of our church now. Through that. When I first started, you could go down the street and knock on doors. People would open the door and you'd say, "Hey, I'm Ken Wells from the Northview Baptist Church. Just want to talk to you about the Lord and about our church." And even if they wasn't really that interested, they were fairly polite about it. Well, nowadays people won't even open the door. Right. So the old-fashioned knocking on doors, it's out nowadays. So our marketing, so to speak, is really through social media or through printed media, or really the word of mouth is the best way of doing it. But just getting up and doing a few songs out of the song book. Teresa was on the piano, and we had an organ nobody played. But today
that old Hammond B3.
Yes, yes. And, you know, today we have a full band.
Yeah.
You know, we have...
Well, let me ask you this, because you come from kind of the old school.
Yeah.
Old school. You know, a lot of pastors have never been able to make that transition to having drums,
Yeah.
to having guitars, to having a full band on the stage, to having even a worship team.
Right.
Was it hard for you to make that transition?
Not for me, because I've enjoyed all kinds of music. And I understand from, especially Old Testament, they used a lot of instruments in their worship. And so for me, it really wasn't a problem. One of my first groups to bring into the church was called the Masters Four.
I remember
They actually
that.
become the Texans. They moved to Branson.
Now, they were out of Arlington Baptist College.
They were.
Yeah, I remember them.
Sam Ray and J.D. Capps.
Yep.
And when I first brought them, they just sang with a piano and a bass guitar when I first knew them. But that Sunday they came to me, they brought drums. Well, our folks said, "What about these drums?" And I said, "I'm fine with it." I said, "You listen to the radio, they got drums. We play track music to sing with. They got drums." I said, "It's no big thing to me."
Right.
So nowadays we use, keyboard, a variety of things. We use track music to kind of fill in behind all of it with all kinds of good stuff. And it's just a full sound, and it just really accentuates it. Also, it's a lot of people get involved. People who can play the guitar, people who can do other types of instruments, people who can run sound and technology things. Gives them a place to serve that they probably wouldn't have done before. So that's unique in that way.
So you're, because of that, because of transitions that churches have made as far as how they deliver the message, how they deliver the music. Worship itself has changed through the years, and how people have the freedom to worship. And I notice at your church that people have that freedom to worship as they are.
Yes, sir.
But there's a lot of churches that don't. There's a lot of churches that still don't believe that you ought to raise hands. You got to be stereotyped as sit where you are and sing a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, but that's an important part of being able to give of yourself back to the Lord,
That's
isn't
right.
it?
Yes, sir. It is, and we enjoy that. Our folks we're just down home people, and loving the Lord, and they get to express it through their singing. And some don't sing. I say, well, at least mouth the words, that kind of thing. But they do have various expressions of their worship and their faith, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I did grow up in kind of an old school style that, you sang 3 songs out of the hymn book, and the first, second, and last verse.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and the preacher got up with a 3-piece suit and wingtip shoes and blowed back hair.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was, and you went to church.
Yeah.
Well, those days are past, and I'm glad they are, honestly.
Yeah.
I would never want to diminish the gospel. Mm-hmm. The power of the gospel has never changed. From my pulpit, as long as I'm there, we preach Jesus, we preach the blood of Jesus. Mm-hmm. I give an invitation, an altar call at every service that I do. Mm-hmm. A lot have got away from that. Mm-hmm. We don't. We're going to stay true to that. That's not a tradition. I think that's truly a calling to reach out, to present the gospel, to let people come to make a response to what they've heard, to receive the Lord and to let the Lord make a change in their life.
Well, but that's what you're there for, right? You're there to give people an opportunity to establish a personal relationship with Jesus. And it seems like to me, to let them go without giving them the opportunity when they've just heard the message of Christ, it's not right. Yeah.
No, you've proclaimed their sin, and we've all sinned, obviously. And so now we say, here's how you get out of that. Here's how you're forgiven. Here's how you can have a relationship with God. And for those who've already been saved and believers, now how you can grow in your faith. Mm-hmm. I did a sermon last Sunday about nobody's fault. I've done 3-week sermons. One is my fault, it's their fault, and nobody's fault.
Right.
And sometimes storms happen, but those sermons were really to draw Christian people closer to God and to strengthen their faith in how God watched over them during the storms. Mm-hmm. And then there are times that it's truly evangelistic. It's just purely come and get Jesus in your heart,
Well, your church is way beyond 20 people now. You're hundreds and hundreds of people that come and worship on Sundays. Through the years, as a pastor, do you ever look back and go, if I had that to do over, I'd have done it differently?
Oh, yes, sir. Sometimes I do that on Sunday afternoon when I'm leaving the church. I could have done that one a little bit different. But, there's times that we could have made some changes through the years, maybe some programs that we kept on too long, that were not working, or they worked for a season.
Yeah.
One of those was Sunday night church.
Right.
I was Sunday night church. I believed if you loved Jesus, you had to be there on Sunday nights.
Wednesday nights?
The whole thing. Mm-hmm. But in time, we realized we had the same few people coming. Mm-hmm. We were putting our staff really working hard to put a program together to take care of children and do all that we needed to do.
Yeah.
And so we made a decision, and really it came down to my desk, that we called it, and we said, look, we're going to put more effort, do all that we can for Sunday worship, Sunday Bible studies. Yeah. We're doing 2 services now. Coming Easter, we're going to do 3 services. Mm-hmm. So we do an emphasis on Wednesday night. We have a tremendous Wednesday program for Bible studies of all ages and everything. Mm-hmm. But Sunday night, we had to make that call. But we looked at it, and we evaluated it and said, okay, it's time to quit doing that. Now, some churches still do, and wonderful for them. Mm-hmm. But for us, it was just time to make the change.
Well, sometimes you got to think about the message that you're preaching, the message that you're teaching. You're talking about families and families coming together, and sometimes you take the only time that they have because everybody works so hard these days. You just kind of take away from what you're trying to teach them to do.
Well, sometimes you have to take what they give you, and if they'll give you Sunday morning, we'll be happy with that. If they give me Wednesday night, but way back in the day, Sunday nights was kind of like a social gathering for a lot of churches.
Right.
Well, nowadays with television and all the activities and sports for kids on Sundays and things, it's tough. Yeah. So we just really put our stuff together on Sundays, Wednesdays, and push it the best we can. And we do discipleship during the week, but the big days are really Sunday and Wednesday.
You have a great church, great people. People talk so highly of you. People, you're just down the street from the barbecue restaurant, and people come in here and they just talk so highly about their pastor, and it's always refreshing to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go back to 2020.
Okay.
Because every church got a little nervous back in 2020 when you couldn't have church. But I think you told me one time that it gave you opportunities. It gave you 2020 and being in the pandemic gave you creative opportunities to reach people in a different way, which I think is what you're continuing to do.
Well, it is. In 2020, in October of 2020, I came down with a severe case of COVID pneumonia and flu type B.
And if I remember correctly, they didn't know if you were going to live.
They didn't really think I was. They put me in the hospital. I was 6 days on that ventilator. And I thought they were just being nice to let my family stay in there with me as much as they did. I think now that I look back on it, they thought I was probably about to go and want to give my family as much time as possible.
Right.
Kind of hard to swallow that one.
Yeah.
But yes, we did come back and realize that, okay, we were not a highly technological group there at the church, but we started out with an iPhone, doing Facebook Live with an iPhone. And I was there to preach, and my staff was there to hear me. It's tough to preach to your staff, by the way. And so we just used an iPhone.
Yeah.
And then we got a little camera from Best Buy or something like that, one of those kind of things. But we realized that we had a lot of people who were watching online. I did stuff on Wednesday nights from my home. I did a Bible study from my home. Matter of fact, I even did the Lord's Supper from my home one night.
Wow.
I asked the people to go find a cracker, some juice, and I discussed the Lord's Supper, the communion, what it meant. And I was outside, out in my back pasture, teaching that just from home. And I realized we had a lot of people. Through the time now, we've developed our cameras a little bit better.
Yeah.
In our staff meeting just now, we talked about buying some newer ones, not the most professional, but some nicer ones. And it's going to be costly. But we realized that we have a lot of folks that see us, hear us. I was at a restaurant the other day. Lady came up to me, she said, "You're Ken Wells?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "I watch you every Sunday."
My goodness.
I said, "Well, who are you?" And so she was connected to a way, but she'd never been to the church that I know of.
Right.
But we were presenting the gospel to her. We're feeding her the message of the Lord. Every single Sunday, she said, "Well, I don't miss."
Yeah.
And so I just was so appreciative of that. So it gave us an opportunity to do those type of things, using a lot of social media now. And the next step for us, really, we're trying to develop a sound studio to do something similar to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Little podcast type things
Yeah.
from teachings, not only from me, but from other folks on our staff who are very qualified to do a good job with that.
Pastor, don't you think that, I mean, really, are there any boundaries, or should there be any boundaries when it comes to trying to create new ways or better ways for people to hear the gospel?
No, the Apostle Paul said, "I become all things to all men that I may reach some." Now, I would never want to move my integrity in any way or anything to cause my integrity to be questioned. But I wouldn't mind doing other things to reach people. I visited with a music group yesterday. The man called me, and they're a gospel group, but they're transitioning to a country group. But their idea is to take country music with the gospel. And they've already booked the NFR, they've already booked the PBR, they've got a lot of things already lined up. And he said, in all of our shows that we do, he said, we present the gospel. And most of our music is even though country, but there's also gospel music. And I think, well, that's a great platform.
Sure.
You know, I'm limited. I have a Sunday morning group. But this guy's going to be televisions and wherever taking that kind of message to people that I would never probably have contact with. So to me, there is no limits. It's just what your imagination and your pocketbook can do and what the Lord allows you to do. If he says go to it, then he'll provide the means to get there.
Yeah. So back in 2020, as a pastor, I think, I don't know because I'm not a pastor, but back in 2020, did you not sit back in your office and go, wait a minute, what about tithing? Where's the money going to come from to operate?
Yes, sir.
And yet you told me that during the pandemic, you never lost a beat.
No.
People supported the work. Yeah.
Our church is so wonderful, and other churches did the same thing. But we just put it out there, look, support your church. We still have bills to pay, salaries to pay. We still have ministry to do. And they didn't give in person, but they gave online. They gave through their bank. Some did drive up, hand it to us if we were at the office. Some mailed it in. But actually that year, we brought in more than what we had budgeted for. So I'm going, where in the world? And I was, probably all other pastors, we were all worried, like, how can we continue to turn on the lights, even though they were not as much, but our salaries and without, laying off somebody.
Yeah.
And our folks was so good, and I'm sure other churches did the same thing, but man, I can brag on ours. They came through.
Yeah.
And they've continued to come through. You know, we're by no means are we a wealthy church, but we're just good, hardworking people, and they love to give. And so far, we've not missed a beat.
Yeah, yeah. What do you say, Pastor? What do you say to a person that's mad at God? What do you say to a person that's life experiences have brought them to the place where they're just mad at God?
Yeah. Well, first thing I've said to him, I said, it's okay to be mad at God. God is a big God. And He may not have caused something that to happen in your life that way. To realize that He may have allowed it. But He didn't cause it. He was not a vengeful God that reached down and put you through that. So I try to help people to realize that it's okay to be mad at God, to be angry, because He's a big God, just like a dad. You know, your kids can get mad at you, but you're still going to love them.
Right.
Now, you may be hurt by it, but you're still going to love them. And our God is a tremendous God. He's going to love us even though we may be mad, even though we may have walked away from the church. But He's still going to say, you come back home. Like the prodigal son, the father was always waiting. If you watch that story, he was looking down the road for when he saw the shadow of the son way down there, he ran to him. He didn't wait for the boy to come and bow down before him. The father ran to him. And I think the same thing when we walked away from God or we've been angry or mad, when our time comes that we turn back toward Him, He will come toward us. And He's there to love us up, and forgive us, and accept us, you know, that kind of thing. And I've dealt with people, and we've all probably been there where we were disappointed in God, that something didn't go right, you know.
Sure.
Just life handed us a bad deal. But to remember how big God is, and He's okay. It's going to work out, you know.
Pastor, what do you think is the most misunderstood passage in Scripture?
Now that's a good one right there. Most misunderstood.
Would it be scriptures on grace, forgiveness, salvation?
You know, I think maybe one of the most misunderstood ones is on tithing.
Okay.
You know, for some say, well, we're out of the Old Testament. The Malachi passage was, you know. I said, but realize when you get in the New Testament, it's about grace giving. As God has blessed you, you give. So some have had to learn that process, you know. That's confusing for some, and they think the church, all they want is money, that kind of thing. And we don't mind talking about it. You know, that's just part of God's nature of doing things, but that's not our main focus. But I think some have been confused by that through the years. We've tried to teach that and to realize that beyond the Old Testament, the New Testament is grace giving. And that tithing was there, but then we give up and above that, we give sacrificially. It's not that big of a thing. And I think some do struggle with the area of grace, you know, because they still want to maybe think they've got to work or earn their credit with God to get there. You know, and I was that way as a teenager. Before I got saved, I thought, well, God weighed it in the balance, the good and the bad. And then I found out really the bad was outweighing the good for sure.
Right.
And it wasn't anything I could do to change that, except I found grace in the Lord, you know. I just celebrated my spiritual birthday, January 31st, 1974. About a block behind this building is Calvary Baptist Church.
Right.
And on a Wednesday night, I gave my heart to the Lord, and He met me right there. I knelt down as a sinner, but I stood up as a winner, you know. Not perfect by any means, but forgiven. And to think that God would use me for what I'm doing today, it blows my mind.
Sure.
You know, that's not really who I was cut out to be.
Right.
You know, by nature, I'm kind of an introvert, you know. In school, I was not the person most popular by any means.
God's funny, isn't He?
God is working that. We had a school reunion some years ago.
Yeah.
And they had a little thing you filled out, the one who's changed the most, the one who's what this and this, whatever it was. We had one that said the most unlikely occupation, and they voted my name in there. Out of my class, they said, you know, that'd been the last thing they thought I would have done.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, that really is to the grace of God. You know, it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Because that's still not me. God has to do that. So I'm just blown away sometimes by how He can use just a common everyday guy.
Yeah.
Amen.
Does Jesus still work miracles today?
Oh yeah.
You know, a lot of people think that's past dispensation, and we live in a different world, and that doesn't exist. But you got to. How could you limit Jesus on what He can do?
He's the same today, tomorrow, and the next day. You know, some have taken that and used it as a marketing tool, and they've gone to the extreme. By doing the extreme, others have gone to the other extreme and said, it no longer exists. I'm a miracle. I came off of that COVID. I came off of that ventilator, and even my doctor, he said, "You are a miracle." That God came through. People prayed. People I don't even know that've come up to me or that sent me a note, said, "We prayed for you." Didn't even know who they were. And really, I think I'm a living miracle in the fact that I'm here today.
Yeah.
But God can still do miracles. It may not be the way that some ministries try to present it, but He can still do miracles. He's still a powerful God.
Yeah.
Main thing, He changes lives.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one thing that people a lot of times can't really grasp, but that He really can change your life. Now you got to want it. You know, you got to be at that place where you're ready for a change, but He can really change lives.
Yeah, yeah, sure can. And I've seen it happen. Seen it happen in our church. I've seen it happen in my family. Those who've gone away from the Lord, those who are, really, really had some bad times in life and made bad decisions.
Yeah.
But God got a hold of them at just the right time, and now to see them on fire for the Lord, man, what a blessing that is.
What, if you were to say, ministry related, this one thing is what gets me up in the morning, what would it be? I mean, there's a lot of times when pastors want to resign on Monday.
Right.
You know, but they're right back at it. What's the one thing, being a pastor for 42 years, same church, which, by the way, congratulations. That's just unheard of today. You know, I think the average turnover in churches are every 3 to 4 years, something like that. But what's the one thing that you can say, you know what, when things get a little tough, a little rough, this is what keeps me going?
Well, obviously, church answer would say the Lord, okay? But realistically, it's God's people. You know, you'll have some naysayers, you'll have somebody who didn't agree with whatever, and if you focus on them, they'll get you down. But you realize I've got a group of people in our church who support me, they'll go to bat for me. I mean, they would charge the gates of hell with a water gun.
I believe it.
You know, they're just good people. That's what has me going. And I've got a great staff. You know, I don't have to micromanage. You know, they get up and they do their jobs, and it's just good stuff. They're working on their whatever area they're in, and it's just good stuff. So I enjoy when I get there on Sunday morning to interact with the people. You know, I love that. Somebody get up and high five, shake your hand, hug your neck, that kind of thing. Either coming in or going out, that type of thing.
Pastor, I sure appreciate you being here. Time goes so quickly. I want you to come back, because I got 100 other questions that I want to ask you that help people. You're in the people helping business.
Yes, sir.
But we're going to close it out for now. Terry, let's go.